out from a hat. So now there is one more thing. Suppose if we have there is an equation which we can write these things in terms of equation form. If we have distributed loads, so then it would be something like this. We have a beam and on a section of this let us say this is our x coordinate. I have drawn a broken beam, there may be something at the start, there will be obviously some support either at the left or at the right. I am just showing a section of the beam where there is a distributed load and the load is given as W of x. Now while deriving this formula, let us keep some things in mind. The W of x, at least as we are deriving, is acting downwards. If it is acting upwards, a minus sign will come. So this is we are deriving this for the loading W of x acting downwards. So let us work this out. So what we do is, let us consider a section of length delta x which is located at x from the point of start or from the point where we are considering the origin of the coordinate system. So that means what we are doing is, so first let me make this lid acts downwards. So we consider, so what we are trying to derive here are differential relations for and this sort of a technique you will find we always do when we have to derive an equation for something which is changing continuously. Then what we will get will be a differential equation. It will not be an algebraic equation because things are changing continuously in space. And the way we derive these differential equations is we take a general element of a very small length. It could be delta x, if it is an area it will be delta x delta y and so on, and we consider the equilibrium on this differential section. So on the or on this infinitesimal section. So we consider an infinitesimal section of beam of length delta x located at the distance x. So let us show this section. This is a blown up view. The loading on the top of this section is W of x. Now we are neglecting the weight of the beam. What are the other forces which will come? So that means now we have cut the beam at two sections, at x and x plus delta x. See, this left side is at a distance x away. Maybe I can show this explicitly. This is x, this is delta x. Now what other forces and moments will come on this section? Now because we have cut it, at each cut we will have a shear force and a bending moment. I am assuming there are no axial forces, otherwise an axial force will also come. Okay. So now how do we show the shear force on the right face? On the right face we will show it as downward. This is our sign convention, and this will be actually V at x plus delta x. Where will be the shear force on the left face? It will go upwards by our sign convention, and this will be V of x. Now similar to this we will have moments. The moment here on this face I will put it like this will be m at x plus delta x, and this moment here will be m at x. Okay, is that clear? So now, given this, all I have to do is write the equations of equilibrium. What are my equations of equilibrium? Sigma Fy is equal to 0 and sum of moments is equal to 0. So let us do this. Let us write our equations of equilibrium. Let us do when I put sigma Fy is equal to 0, what will I get? V of x. Now, the loading is W of x. What is the unit of W of x? Newtons per meter. So what is the effective load because of this W of x over this length delta x? It will be W of x multiplied by delta x. So that means I write V of x, this is positive upwards, minus W of x delta x minus V of x plus dx is equal to 0. Is that clear? We have taken all the forces. So V of x minus V of x plus delta x minus W of x delta x is equal to 0. So when we write this, we can write this as V of x plus delta x minus V of x is equal to, let us take V of x on the other side, is equal to minus W of x delta x. And if I write this clearly, so let me go to the next page, I will write these equations there. So what I will get is V of x plus delta x minus V of x is equal to and what the next step I am going to do? Limit delta x going to 0, what happens to the left hand side? It becomes the derivative, it will be dV by dx. So when I say in all these infinitesimal elements, when we derive differential equation, this is how we do. Then we look at the things in the limit delta x goes to 0. So this will become dV by dx is equal to minus W of x. So this is the equation which I get for the shear force, that dV by dx is equal to minus W of x. So if the loading is given, then the integral under the load will give me the change in the shear force. Okay. So this I can integrate this will give me V at x minus V at x0 is equal to, with a minus sign of course, minus W of x dx with x going from x0 to x. Okay. So now we do the same thing for the moment. When I do the same thing for the moment, I will again take all the clockwise moments. So I will get, what will I get? M of x plus delta x minus M of x. Now before I write the moments, first I should define the point about which I am taking the moments. I can either take the moments about the left edge or the right edge or about the center, anywhere I could take. What should I do? Let us choose the right edge. It won't make a difference, I can choose any point. I choose, so let us take the moments about, let us call this as A. We take, actually I should either take moments about A or about B. What is the reason for doing that? So that one of the shear forces does not contribute. If I take the middle point, both of them will contribute, it will add to my work slightly, nothing more. So that is why I choose, let us say, point A. So when I take moments about point A, what do I get? So I have, firstly the two moments will come as it is, M at x plus delta x minus M of x. These two terms come from the two moments, Now I am taking moments about A. What is the moment due to V of x? Minus V of x delta x. So the moment because of V of x will be minus V of x delta x. Should I put this is equal to 0 or have I missed out something? Now I have missed out, there is a W of x also. I have to take the moments because of W of x. Now what is the force because of W of x? Wx delta x. Now where is it acting? Delta x by 2. See, this distribution could have any shape. So what I will say is, it will act at beta times delta x, where beta is a fraction which could vary between 0 and 1. Is that right? That would be a more precise way of saying it. That it will act somewhere from here to here. So I make it as a general point that it will be a fraction between 0 and 1. It could either be 0, it could be 1, depending on where the load is. So what I will do is, so that means this load, this is W of x delta x, and it acts at beta delta x from A, where beta lies between 0 and 1. Because I am not talking of a discrete load, I do not put an equality, because it is a continuously varying load, so that there has to be some contribution either from this side or that side. So it will vary between 0 and 1. So now what will be the contribution because of this? It will be,
so but given that we are taking an infinitesimally small segment, shouldn't it actually act on the center? That's the whole point of the infinitesimally small segment.
well, we will come to that. Actually it will turn out it won't matter, because that term will anyway go away. So let us see this. So this will become plus W of x delta x times beta delta x. See, there is a variation there. It is an infinitesimal this thing. So, well, in some sense you are right, because we have taken the load to be W of x delta x, not integral over that. So with that argument you can say it is half. Maybe I am trying to just be a bit more precise without any reason. Okay. So sum of all this must be equal to 0. Now here what we will say is that now we neglect now beta I am taking it from this side, from the right. So see, I have safeguarded this by saying it is a fraction. So between 0 and 1, so it could be 1 minus. So therefore we are neglecting second order terms containing delta x square. So that means what I will have finally will be m of x plus delta x minus m of x divided by delta x is equal to v of x, and this gives me, in the limit delta x going to 0, so what we have got, and from here what we can get is moment at x now these two things which we have derived here, one for the loading, one for the shear force, one for the moments, they are as formulas we may not use them, but they are useful in their physical interpretation, because what this tells us is that a change in the moment, bending moment between 2 points will be equal to the area under the shear force curve between those 2 points. So if we have drawn the shear force curve, then the area under the shear force curve will give us the value by which the bending moment changes between these 2 points. Also, this helps us in giving us the maximum or minimum value of bending moment. Why? Because dm by dx at the point where this is 0, that will be the point where the bending moment will be maximum or minimum. So that means at the point where the bending moment is maximum or minimum, what is the value of the shear force? It has to be 0. So these things sometimes can help us qualitatively when we draw the diagrams for the shear force and bending moment. Okay. So these relations, you may not use them to find the equations or to draw the diagrams, but they can always provide a helpful input. And particularly, as I said, when we draw the shear force diagram of a beam, what we are looking for is the point where the bending moment is maximum, because the bending moment causes an extension in the beam, and the maximum bending moment tells us the point where the stresses will be maximum. And so the beam has to be so designed so that it can withhold, or it can resist, or it can provide a support to that stress. So you have to design a structure or a section which will be able to take that load. So that is why the bending moment diagrams are important per se, because given a loading you would like to find the shear force and bending moment. I will take one more example on shear force and bending moment before I finish this, but we have completed the theory. Let us have another examples where a couple of more things will be illustrated in this example. So let us take a beam which I call AD. I will give these dimensions first. So AD is a beam, B and C are just 2 points with there is no joint or anything, it is something like. Now at B we have a 10 kilonewton force acting like this. At section C we have a small section which is protruding from the beam, which is welded to the beam. So that means if I call this CE is the same part of the structure ABCD. So CE is welded, there is no pin joint, it is the same beam together. Okay, so this is just welded here. So this is a, so CE is integrated with the beam AD. So I will just say it is welded at C. Now at E we have a 5 kilonewton force acting like this, a horizontal force of 5 kilonewtons, and from B to C we also have a uniformly distributed force which is 2 kilonewtons per meter. Okay. So this is the beam and the loading. There is a point force of 10 kilonewtons. On the extended part C of the beam there is a horizontal force of 5 kilonewtons, and there is a uniform loading of 2 kilonewtons per meter from B to C. On the left end there is a pin support, on the right end there is a pin support with rollers. We are asked to draw the shear force and bending moment diagram, or write the equations for shear force and bending moment for the beam AD. For the whole beam we have to write the shear force and bending moment. Okay, yeah. Pardon? That height is required. Okay, thanks. Height of CE, I missed that out, is 0.5 meters. And as I would say, at least I am happy somebody is awake in the class. When I miss out things like this, I say I deliberately missed this out, because I wanted to check if somebody points it out to this or not. So another of these cases. Now how do we do this? So first thing we will do, as we draw the free body diagram of the beam, AX, AY, dy, these are the unknown forces, and then we have 10 kilonewtons. Now, how much is the equivalent of this force on BC? It will be 16 kilonewtons. And then, now, what do we do about this 5 kilonewtons? Now, we have to draw the free body diagram of the beam AD. So, what we will do is, we will write the equivalent of this 5 kilonewtons at point C. So, what is the equivalent of the 5 kilonewtons at point C? It will be 5 kilonewtons force and a moment which is equal to R cross F. So, 0.5 into 5 kilonewtons acting in the clockwise direction. So, that means what I do is at the point C, I show a 5 kilonewton force and the moment equal to 2.5 kilonewton meters, and these are really the equivalent of 5 kilonewton force at C. And this is how we take care of forces which are acting not directly on the beam but through some extension. Okay. So, once I have this, then I will carry out sigma fx is equal to 0, sigma fy is equal to 0. So, now I do the I write these equations. I think you should be able to do this. I will write the answers directly. When we do this, what we will get is Ay comes out to be 14.56 kilonewtons and dy turns out to be 11.44 kilonewtons. Ax turns out to be equal to -5. Actually, Ax doesn't matter to us in the shear force and bending moment, so we don't even need to write this. Okay, so these you will work out by taking moments and forces. In fact, this so you will be able to get these. I think you should be able to. All the distances are given. Now, where will the 16 kilonewton force act? That should be at the middle. So that means this should be this distance here. Obviously, should be 12. That's the only thing which has not been given in the figure. Everything else is already there. So you work this out. So now, given this, now we come into the business of drawing the shear force and bending moment diagrams and writing their equations. So let's start looking at this. Let me first notionally draw the, let's draw the diagram of the beam. So we have this beam, we have the force Ay 14.56, then at 1/3 of the distance we have this distance, this force of 10 kilonewtons, then we have 2 kilonewtons, then we have at this point we have a moment of 2.5 kilonewton meter and there is an axial force, and at this point we have 11.44 kilonewtons. So let us start. Now we start from 0. Till what point can we write the shear force and bending moment without any change? Up till 8. Nothing is happening between 0 and 8. We start from 0, there is a force, till 8 nothing happens. So we will start our equations from 0 to 8. First we start that. What is the shear force? It will be 14.56 directly, plus 14.56. What is the bending moment? Now let me write this, let's see if everyone follows this or not. Now notionally what I am doing is, when I am writing this, I am cutting a section at x which is between 0 and 8, and there is a single force of 14.56. So, now on all sections to its right, what does this 14.56 do? It will create, we put a shear force V like this, so that means V must be equal to 14.56. So, that is how I directly get 14.56. And on all sections to its right, a force applies a moment equal to the force multiplied by this distance, which we called zeta in the last class. So, now that becomes, that distance from the cut section to the point of application of the force is how much? X. So, therefore, the moment becomes 14.56 x. Is this clear to everyone? Not clear to those two people, I am sure this. They are having a very nice time. नहीं, let them sleep यार, please disturb मत करो उनको. बड़ा आराम से सो रहे हैं तो. Okay. So, now this is from 0 to 8. Now, if you are to draw the diagram, let this be 0. So, now the shear force diagram, how will this look like? Let us say this is the distance 8. So, shear force is 14.56. So, it just stays at 14.56, it is a flat line. What about the bending moment? Bending moment starts from 0 and then it becomes 14.56 x. So, that means the bending moment will go like a straight line starting from 0, and this is 14.56 x. So, this value if we need, we can work it out, 14.56 multiplied by 8. Is this clear? So, this is the first part. Now, the second part, at 8 what happens? Two things are happening simultaneously at 8. There is a point force and we have a distributed section. Now, where does the distributed section continue till? Till 16. So, that means the next eventful point, so to say, in this distribution is at 16. So, that means now we will go from 8 to 16 because nothing else is happening in between. So, next will be from 8 to 16. Now, in this what is happening is, let us see, there is 14.56, there is 10, and we have this distributed section. Now, let us write these distances carefully. This total distance is x, this distance is 8. So, what is this distance? X minus 8. Once we get our distances clearly, then everything else is just a cakewalk. What is the shear force? Let us start now. We have 14.56, so we will have plus 14.56. Then we have minus 10, so because of this 10 we get minus 10. What is the next thing? X minus 8. This is downward, so we will get minus of, now this is 2 kilonewtons per meter. So, what is this effective load? 2 multiplied by x minus 8. So, therefore, we will put it as minus 2 multiplied by x minus 8. So, this is our shear force. Okay. Is that clear? Just think about it. There are three things, 1, 2, 3. We have to just add the contribution of each of these. Point forces, you directly get constants. Distributed force, you have to work out whatever is the effective value of this force. See, now you realize we don't take the equivalent of the full 16 kilonewtons. We only have to look at the cut section, and whatever is acting on the cut section, we only have to count that. You will get the same answer if you come from the other side, but there the reactions will be different and there will be different forces. But obviously, because the total beam is balanced, you will get the same answer. So, it is not that the answers will be different. Okay. So, this is the shear force. What do we do to the bending moment? We follow the same thing, three things. So, there will be three terms. We can simplify this later. What I have written here, this can be simplified. All constants, we can put it in the form ax plus b. Okay. Now let's write the bending moment. What's the bending moment? We again go term by term. The contribution of 14.56. 14.56, the contribution will be 14.56x. What is the contribution of 10? Minus 10. Now 10 is acting at this. The distance zeta is this cut section to this point. How much is that? X minus 8. So that means we will put minus 10 times x minus 8. Okay, is this clear? Now the third thing, this distributed force. Let's write this. This is the one. Again, first of all, the sign will be minus because the force is acting downwards. How much is the force? 2 times x minus 8. We can copy it from the previous one, from the shear force. So the force is 2 times x minus 8. Now where is this force acting? It is acting at half of this, and we have to look at the distance from the cut section, not from the start. Please, in this case it doesn't matter, but we have to look at this section to half of this. What is half of this? X minus 8 divided by 2. So that means what we have to multiply here is with an x minus 8 divided by 2. So let me, I think I'll write this on the next page. So the moment then turns out to be 14.56x minus 10 times x minus 8 minus 2 times x minus 8 times x minus 8 by 2. And here this is what was the load P, this is the distance zeta. Here 10 was P, this is what we had written as zeta, 14.56 was P, x was zeta. This is just relating to the last lecture. So here maybe we can say reference to lecture 6. So this is how we get the equation of the bending moment. Is that clear? Now one more thing, we have to go to the next point. The next point, if we look at the total, now if we look at the diagram, okay, maybe we can continue with this diagram also. So first of all, if I move to this diagram now, I will use the red color for the second part. In the shear force diagram, I had 14.56. The first thing which I do is minus 10. That means I come down to 4.56. Then I have minus 2 times x minus 8. So that means it's a linear thing which is going down. So it has to be something like up till 16. Now what I will do is, I know I have come down minus 10. That means I have come to this point at 4.56. Now at x is equal to 16, in this formula I will plug in the value of x is equal to 16. It comes out to be minus 11.44. It is not a magical figure because that was the reaction at the other end, and eventually everything has to balance. So that means this value, when I look at this is minus 11.44. So that means from this point I will go in a straight line up till minus 11.44. So what I need to do is just work out the value at the two end points, draw a straight line. This is the shear force. Okay, is this clear? Then normally I may not even go in this much details in the exam. I will ask you to either write the equations or draw the figure. Okay, these such details are more important for civil engineers. So maybe you are lucky or not civil engineers. Now what about the bending moment? Now in the bending moment what we have is, now the area under the shear force curve, that gives us the bending moment. Then what you find is the shear force is becoming 0 at this point. You can work out the magnitude of this point. So the bending moment curve, you know, is a quadratic equation. See, it's an x square, x and x. It's a quadratic equation. Now for its nature, what do you know? What you will know is that at this point the bending moment should become maximum. it will increase till this point because the area is increasing, and then we have a negative area after this point. So till this point you will have a quadratic curve which will increase till this point, and after this it will start decreasing. Okay. So what we will do is, at x is equal to 16, let us calculate, we feed in this, work out the value of the bending moment. So when we do that, when I work out the value, have I worked it out? Let me see. It turns out to be something which will still be positive. I have not worked out the actual numbers. So what happens is, the bending moment diagram, it's a quadratic curve, it goes till a maximum at this point and then it decreases till 16. So it's a quadratic, this is just a shape, till x is equal to 16, it shows the value is still positive. You can work out the value, I have not worked it out for me, but this is how, it's a quadratic curve, it takes a shape like this. Qualitatively we should be knowing, exact numbers don't matter unless if you are asked to find at a particular point. If you are asked to find at a particular point, you don't even need to do all this, you just draw a section, write your equations of equilibrium. So you have to look at the type of problem you have. Now next, let's go. So now the next critical point is, so you have already worked out the value is 16. So x from 16 to 24. Oh, sorry. Next we go from 16 to 24. Now when we go from 16 to 24, let's draw, we have, this is 14.56, then we have 10. Now what do we do of the distributed load when I go from 16 to 24? I will replace it by, now I am not cutting at a section which is in between the load. The load has already been crossed. So what I can do is replace it by its equivalent. So I will put it as a force equal to 16 and this distance is 12. Okay. Now, so this is 8, that is 12, and at 16 what happens? At 16 there is an axial force of 5 kilonewtons and there is a clockwise moment which is equal to 2.5 kilonewton meters, and then we have, so this is our section x minus 16. So this is our section x. So this is the effective loading which is taking place on the beam at a section x and all parts to its left. Is this clear? And this is critical because now we are dealing with the uniform load in a different way. But given this, now can you write the shear force and bending moment equations in a straightforward way or not? Let's write it. We have already seen what is V. V will be equal to 14.56 minus 10 minus 16. And what will it turn out to be equal to? Minus 11.44. Is it surprising? No, because at the end the reaction was also 11.44, and that is because at the end we have a fixed, it's not a, at a support the reaction, then finally that it should be equal to the value of the reaction. Now in the bending moment we will have to be careful. I want the class to start. 14.56, what is the contribution of this to bending moment? 14.56 x, because the distance is x. Now next 10, contribution of 10, plus or minus? Minus 10 times what? X minus, this is x minus 8, okay. Contribution of 16, minus 16 times x minus 12. Now I would like some, now anything more. So we have come this point, this point, this point. Now what about, there is a moment of 2.5 kilonewton. So this is clockwise. So that means an anti-clockwise moment will act on all sections to its right. So that means in addition to this we will have to put plus 2.5. And remember, when I wrote the rules, I said two things. A moment induces on all sections to its right. A clockwise moment induces on all sections a positive bending moment. And I also said it does not explicitly do anything to the shear force. So this 2.5 kilonewton meters did not affect the way we wrote the shear force equations. We only put forces. But does it affect the shear force overall? It does, because the reactions are different otherwise. If this moment was not there, the reactions would have been different. So, but once the reactions are calculated, it doesn't affect, the point moment does not affect the shear force diagram. It only creates a jump in the bending moment diagram. So, coming back to our shear force diagram, so are these two things clear? How we write the equations? Now you can simplify and put them in the form ax plus b or whatever, and so on. Also you should always put the units in your answers. Maybe I have not put them here, but so if we move from 16 to 24, the shear force, let's put a blue color to this or maybe a navy blue, shear force stays at minus 11.44. What happens in the bending moment diagram? First of all, there will be a jump. First of all, and that is what I wanted to point out when I do the bending moment diagram, because at 16 there is a clockwise bending moment, a point moment of 2.5. So in the bending moment diagram, first thing will be that there will be a jump of 2.5, and after that, what sort of, because the shear force diagram is just straight, that means the bending moment diagram will be a straight line. It will no longer be a quadratic curve. So from this point, first you create a jump and then it will be a straight line going up to 0. So this is a straight line, and this red portion is quadratic. Okay, so this is how we draw the shear force and bending moment diagrams. This example which I took illustrated 2 or 3 points. One thing what I told you was how to take care of forces acting at an offset. If the part is welded, then you will also get a moment. If there is a joint only, you will not get a moment, you will only get reactions. So this is one thing which I taught you here. Then we learned from this, if there is a concentrated moment, what effect it does on the bending moment diagram and on the shear force diagram. Effectively nothing to the shear force diagram, but in the bending moment diagram it will create a jump, just as a point force creates a jump in the shear force diagram. So that is what is there, and so with these simple rules we can look at and work out the concept of shear force and bending moment and the diagrams. Is that clear? Okay. Now there is a section on beams, on cables. We will not be doing that. So in this chapter there is also a section in the book on cables. We will not be looking at that. What we will be moving on next to would be the concept of friction, dry friction. And actually this is one of the most it's a very simple concept. The laws are quite straightforward, but in terms of problem solution, at least till 10 years back, that this was the most misunderstood concept. Now, even now it may be most misunderstood, but because we taught it and we gave so much emphasis on what the mistakes were, and some of our students, at least I know some people were a part of some of these classes which you must have attended, and so therefore I think this now slowly has come, and at least all the classes which train people are now concentrating on friction quite well. So now we move on to the concepts of friction. And friction basically represents a tangential force at the surface. So suppose we have two surfaces which meet at P and Q. So point P is on surface 1, point Q is on surface 2. Now if this is a planar contact, then we will have infinite points 1 and 2, but there could be a point contact between two surfaces. So these two, that means we have two bodies 1 and 2 which may be moving. Point P on body 1 comes in contact with point Q on body 2. Now whichever to these surfaces, to the common surfaces, there is a normal direction and there is a tangential direction. So this is the normal direction and ET is the tangential direction. And what I am saying is the tangential force which comes from the other body on body 1 is what we call as the force due to friction. So friction is a contact force, typically a contact force. In a liquid friction there may be a layer of liquid between two bodies, so then it will be the force the liquid puts on the body. So it's a contact force which acts in a direction tangent to the direction of contact, which would also be tangent to the direction of motion. Okay, so that is what is friction. Now before I talk of, in this course we will be talking mainly of solid friction, which means we have two bodies P and Q, or two bodies 1 and 2 coming in contact with each other. The force in the normal direction if it is a point force, then we call it as a normal reaction. If it is a total area of contact, then the integrated force over that whole area is what we term as the normal reaction. So this is the force in the EN direction, and the force in the ET direction, this is what we term as the force of friction. Now before we move on, let me explain. There are three conditions which I will talk, which are kinematical conditions, which means they have nothing to do with forces, and these conditions we talk as slip, no slip, and impending slip, and these are kinematical conditions. Now what do we mean by kinematical conditions? That means they deal with only velocity and accelerations, not with forces. Okay. Now what do we mean? So that means what we have here is, I am talking in context of these things. We have body 1 and body 2 which are in contact. So I have not shown them in contact just to show but they are in contact. We have point P on body 1 touching point Q on body 2. What is the meaning of slip? If we say there is a slip between these two contacts, now first of all you realize if these bodies are in contact, then the velocities of P and Q have to be only along ET direction. They will not be along EN, because if there is a velocity along EN direction, either the bodies will penetrate or they will separate and the contact will not be there. So for the contact to be there, the velocity has to be only along ET. So now if velocity of P, what do we mean by slip? Slip will mean that velocity of P is not equal to velocity of Q. The 2 points are in contact, but their velocities are different. So the condition which we mean slip means Vp is not equal to Vq. Okay. And this is whatever time we are looking at that time the two velocities are not equal, it slip. Now if the two velocities are equal, then there are two possibilities. One possibility is that the velocities are equal at this time and they are also equal at the next instant. If the velocities are equal at this time and they are also equal for the corresponding contact point, the contact points may change, but whichever are the contact points and the velocity is also equal at the next instant, then we say it is a case of no slip. So no slip means Vp is equal to Vq at t is equal to t0 and Vp is equal to Vq at t is equal to t0 plus. T0 plus means the next instant. At both these instants the contact points have the same velocity, so that will mean, and what this will mean is if I look at the tangential component of the acceleration of P, that must be equal to the tangential component of acceleration of T at T is equal to I have already written at T is equal to T0. So acceleration of P and acceleration of Q, their tangential components must be equal. So this T represents tangential. Now from here what is the meaning of impending slip? Impending slip would be if the same thing is continued, then the body will start to slip at the next instant. So impending slip will mean Vp is equal to Vq at t is equal to t0, but Vp is not equal to Vq at t is equal to t0 plus. And in this case acceleration of P in the tangential direction is not equal to AQT. In fact, I should probably not use the vector sign on this, maybe I should just remove this because I am talking of a component. So the tangential, when I say tangential, that means I am already talking of a component, I should remove the vector sign. So accelerations are not equal, that would be a case of impending slip. And the reason why these things are important for us from a friction perspective is that we have certain laws of friction which are assigned to Coulomb and we still follow those laws. They are valid under most circumstances, called Coulomb's law of dry friction. And what Coulomb's law of dry friction, so I think this you have studied in school, but we can just recap the laws of dry friction, which are Coulomb's laws. That the first law says the total force of friction is independent of the area of contact for low velocities. Friction force is now actually I am writing the laws, but what actually is the friction force between two bodies? When two bodies are in contact, then a tangential force develops at the contact, and what does it tend to do? It tends to lower down or to stop the relative motion between the two bodies. When the two bodies are in contact with each other, they tend to stay and have the same velocity. And if the forces acting on them are such that one of them tends to move, then internally at the contact a force comes which tries to hinder the movement of this body, and this force is what we term as the force of friction. Okay. And what Coulomb did a lot of experiments and he came across these laws. The first law which he found was that the total force of friction which is there on a body which is in touch with another body, and here when we talk of this is probably planar contacts. So there it is independent of the area of contact. Secondly, he also found that for low velocities, friction force is independent of the velocity. Now notice this is valid only for dry friction. In case of, if there is a layer of fluid which is causing the friction, then in fact the law says it is proportional to the velocity. So for fluid friction this is not valid, this is valid only for dry friction, when there is a dry contact between two bodies. And the third law, which is the one where most of the problems come, and what it says is, for impending slip or slip. So now he is talking of two cases. Either the body is just about to slip, that means you are applying a force on a body. There is a let us say a duster kept on a table, you apply a horizontal force. When you apply a small force, the duster does not move, but eventually as you keep on increasing the force, after some time the duster starts to slide. So when it is just starting to slide, we call that as impending slip, and once it is starting to slide, it has started sliding, we call that as slip. And for impending slip and slip we have two cases. So what we have is, for these two cases friction is proportional to the normal reaction for impending slip and slip. And what we have is, if we have impending slip, then we write friction force is equal to mu s n, and if we have actual slip, then we write friction is equal to mu k n. Mu s and mu k, they are termed as the coefficient of static and dynamic friction respectively, and normally or always, in fact, mu s is greater than or equal to mu k. Normally mu s is greater than mu k. In some exceptional cases you may say they are almost equal. So when I say normally, maybe I should say normally mu s is greater than mu k. The coefficient of static friction is more than, there is a slight drop in the value of kinetic friction. If they are not given specifically, then we can take them as equal. Okay. So but the third part, that is, and this is one where most mistakes are made, when there is no slip, then what can we say about the friction? For no slip, what we can also only say is that friction force is less than mu s n, but we cannot relate F to n by an equation. Okay, and this is what will reflect in the problems which we solve, that often even if there is a case of no slip, we find people applying and writing F is equal to mu n. This formula has been ingrained in our heads, F is equal to mu n, and actually it is valid only for slip or impending slip. For no slip, F is not equal to mu n, it is less than mu n, so there is no relation between F and n. Both of them are two different unknowns and you have to count them as two unknowns. So that is how you will have to use this when you use our equations, and you have to keep this in mind. Now let us try to illustrate this with some simple examples. Let us take a case where we have, I will use some very simple example in today's class, and then next class maybe I will take more examples, but today let us take a block B and we have a block A which is lying on top of this. The velocity of block A is VA, its acceleration is AA, this is VB, AB. Now what we want to illustrate in today's simple, we will take some simple cases and we will see how we draw the free body diagrams only with respect to friction. Other forces etc. we will not take care of. So right now I will take some contrived cases, I am not taking some actual problems. So now one more thing we have to keep in mind is, and this is another common source of mistake, when we have a planar contact, let us say this block or a case like this, a block A on the ground. When we draw the free body diagram of block A, there is a tendency to show the normal reaction acting at the center. Do we do that or not? Think about it. Now in general this normal reaction is basically whatever are the contact forces here, if you integrate that, their normal component, and in a typical problem this will not necessarily act at the center. It will depend on the type of loading your body has, and in general the normal reaction should be shown as acting at some unknown distance x, not at the center of the body. From your laws of statics you may get that it is acting at the center, that is possible, but it may not act at the center. So therefore if you always, in a lot of problems you do not use a moment balance, so therefore it does not matter where you show it as acting, but if the moment balance has to be used, then if you show it acting at the center, in general you will make a mistake. So the normal reaction will act at some unknown distance on the surface at some point where the integrated force is there. And a typical example of this which you can show, that you will suppose if I am applying a force F on a block and the block is not moving. Now here if you show normal reaction acting at the center, then what will happen is then at that there will be an unknown, there will be an extra moment because of F which will not be balanced. So for that moment to be balanced, N has to act at some point other than the center. If it acts at the center, this moment due to F about any bottom point will remain unbalanced. Okay. So this is one common mistake among others. I'll point out to these common mistakes which you make. So now let's come back to this example. There are two blocks A and B on top of each other, VA, AA, VB, AB. So let's come back to this, block A, block B, and here now let's take the case A. VA is equal to 5 meters per second, VB is equal to 2 meters per second, VA is equal to 5 meters per second, I'll write the same, VB is equal to 5 meters per second, acceleration of A is equal to 2 meters per second square. Both the blocks are traveling with the same velocity and same acceleration. Now in this case, at the contact, is it a case of slip, no slip, or impending slip? No slip. Why? Because the velocities are equal and the accelerations are equal. That means they will continue at this. So this is a case of, so first thing we realize is this is a case of no slip. So now if I draw the free body diagram of the top block and the bottom block, what will I do? I will show on the top block there is a normal, I am only showing, highlighting the contact forces. Now on the top block, how will I show friction? Is it mu n or is it just F? Now here I will show a friction force F, and this is not related to n. Okay. Now what about its direction? Do I show it as forward or backward? Now because this is not related to n, so we can show it in any direction, either forward or backward. If our answer is wrong, we will get a minus sign. So in case of no slip, the direction of friction which you show, it can be anything, because the bodies are not slipping and this is an unknown force. If you have chosen a wrong direction, when you do an overall balance of your problem, you will get the correct answer. You will get it with a minus sign if your direction was wrong. So this is how you will show. If you are showing like this on block A, then on block B you will show normal reaction like this and you will show friction like this. In this case, you could have also shown friction like this here, and you could have shown friction like this here. Is this clear? Now let's take another case. This was straightforward. Now in the second case, what we take is VA is equal to 1 meters per second, VB is equal to 1 meter per second, acceleration of A is equal to 2 meter per second square, acceleration of B is equal to 1 meter per second square. Again we take the same blocks, velocities are still the same, but now accelerations are unequal. ऊपर कौन सा है मैं बताता हूँ, let's see. ऊपर is A, that's right, I think it's, तो मैं अपने नोट्स देख लेते ना. Okay. पहले भी यही फिगर बना हुआ था. You are being as lazy as me. You don't want to turn your page. Okay. So now what is this? This is a case of impending slip. Now what I do is, now when I draw the free body diagram, again we highlight only contact forces. So now what is acceleration of A relative to B? This is equal to 2 minus 1 is equal to plus 1 meter per second square. So, block A, the acceleration is 2 meters per second square, and that means when I draw the free body diagram of block A, now this pen refuses to write. Have I done something to this? So let's draw the free body diagram of block A. The pen refuses to move. This pen. Achha, but time up. Let me just do it. Let's do it on the board. There's no problem. Let's use a piece of chalk and do it. So when I draw the free body diagram of block A, that's a small block. Now I'll have normal reaction. Now the acceleration is plus 1 meters. It's in the plus I direction. So where will the force of friction on block A act? It will act in the minus I direction. So I have to show the correct direction. Now I don't have the freedom of choosing it plus or minus. It has to oppose. And what will be this friction force? Because this is impending slip, this will be equal to mu s n. And when I draw the free body diagram of block B, what I will get will be a normal reaction at the top, and here this friction force is equal to mu s n. And what you realize is on block B, the friction force is acting in the forward direction. Even though the block itself is moving in the forward direction, but at the top contact, the friction force will be in the forward direction. So you don't have to go by overall motion of the block to find the friction force. Even though the block is moving in the forward direction, but at the top contact, because of the configuration, friction force also is acting in the forward direction. Of course, at the bottom contact, it will be a different case, because the block is moving forward, and if the ground is stationary, so then the block is acting forward, friction at the bottom contact will be in the minus direction. So that's a different story. I am only highlighting at the contact between A and B. Is this clear? So this is things like this we have to keep in mind when we draw the free body diagrams. Okay. Now next class I will look at the case when we have a point contact, and we will look at some more impending motion. So we will continue on this discussion on Thursday.